Hi everyone, we are live with the first OpenTelemetry and Grafana community call. This is the first one in series. We'd like to cover all the different topics, things that are powered by OpenTelemetry, and how they show up in Grafana, how they show up in Grafana Cloud, in OSS. And here we have a few people who work on all these different experiences. I'm Lyudmila Malkova. I'm a big part of my job is OpenTelemetry and everything around it. We have Nicole. She is a developer advocate at Grafana, working on OpenTelemetry and Locky. And Marylia, she's our guest today. She's going to talk about declarative configuration in OpenTelemetry and also about upcoming GC elections and the community work she's driving. With this, hi everybody. If you have any questions, please send them to the comments. We will be happy to answer. And I'm going to hand it over to Nicole.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Nicole. I just wanted to let everybody know about this new awesome series that Lyudmila and I are starting. So the premise is that Lyudmila comes on as the expert in OTel, and I get to be the beginner asking the beginner questions. So everyone gets to learn while I learn. And I have there's an announcement too. Recently we had ObsCon, and the observability con keynote is on YouTube right now, so I've just put that in the comments, and it's also in the description. This is like a good summary of everything that was announced at ObsCon. So if you haven't already watched it, it's just free on YouTube to watch that. No sign up necessary. So make sure to check that out. And today we're super excited to have Marylia Gutierrez with us over there. And Marylia, maybe you could kick us off and talk a little bit about yourself and who you are and how you got into OpenTelemetry in the first place. Oh, you're muted. Hey, that should be like on a bingo square.
I'm muted, sorry. Hi everyone, my name is Marylia. I work at Grafana. I'm a software developer here, and I also work a lot in OpenTelemetry. So we have a lot of things happening on OpenTelemetry, and Grafana really loves OpenTelemetry. So I'm hoping to talk about all of them today.
Wonderful. So how did you start working on OpenTelemetry, Marylia?
So let me just check one thing, because I'm hearing myself.
Oh, that's super distracting.
Okay, so basically I started working as an end user, and then I really like this area of like observability. So I was like, oh, that is an area that we want to continue to focus on. So then when I was looking for a new job, I was like, no, I want something that is that I want to be. Basically, that would be like my full-time job. And then when I got this opportunity, I found out that is your job is to be a contributor on OpenTelemetry. Like, that is perfect. That is what I wanted. And then when I started working on different things, I just keep finding more and more things to work on. And then I just like, oh, now I like this thing and I want to work on that. Oh, now I like this thing and I like to work on that too. So it's pretty much now I just keep finding more things, and I have like maintainer status and approver status here and there. I just keep adding more things for me to do.
Yeah, that's the danger of open source. It keeps you tight. It never ends. There is an endless amount of work. Well, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, and like I think the problem with OpenTelemetry in particular is also its strength that you're talking about. There's always something that's happening, and there's so many things that you could focus on, but it can be pretty daunting when you're just beginning. With OpenTelemetry in particular, you're trying to figure out how to. When I try to figure out how to instrument an application, it seems like there are so many things that I have to take into account. And then now apparently that's changing as well, that setup. it feels like is always progressing, which is good. It's always getting easier, but it can seem a little disjointed, and then different languages have different processes, and why I guess that's also why we need something like declarative configuration to streamline that process, right?
Yeah, so that is a project that has been happening for several months now, and is a lot of people working on it, and now is on a basically on a state that we have, for example, Java is in a really good place, is working a lot for it, has a lot of like the features already, is fully compatible. A few features still missing. When we say like fully compatible, does not mean done. We still have more things to work on it, but we also have other SDKs that we have been working on the JavaScript one. So uh, I'm adding like more and more features there. And also have for PHP, Go, Python. There's like things happening on all of them. So the hope is to have this compatible with all SDKs.
Well, I know you have some slides you wanted to take us through, so do you want to go through that? And also for everybody watching, Marylia said that she's totally okay if people like interrupt to ask questions and stuff. So you can just leave that in the comments, and we'll make sure that they get answered. Okay, you're muted again, but you're good to go, Marylia, otherwise.
Yeah.
It's AirPods. When you touch them, sometimes they decide to mute.
Yeah, so okay, I'm good now. So let's talk a little about Declarative Config. But before, I want to actually give a little introduction of all the areas that I do touch. So I am, as I mentioned, at Grafana. My team is the OpenTelemetry SDK team. So that is mostly my focus, working on in OTel. But in OTel, I'm working on a couple of different groups. So I'm a maintainer for the contributor experience. So if you are someone that wants to be a contributor and you are having some issues, that is the group that we can help you with. And by the way, we have a new channel that is OTel New Contributor. So you can go to that one on the CNCF Slack to get some help. I also am an approver for the JavaScript SDK, the Portuguese localization, database semantic conventions, and as of a few days ago, also for the communication one. So you can see that I am all over. So let's give a little context about actual configuration. So before things were mostly done using environment variables, and why that was done was mostly because it's very easy to understand environment variables, and it's just something that is universally available. So it doesn't matter like the language, you have at least some version of it. Might have like slightly difference here and there, but it's very easy to like create the same name that everybody can use. And that works great for what we have so far. But the problem now, we want some really advanced configuration. And so we need something complex that can handle this. So we need also something more robust. So that became the idea of declarative configuration. And to make that possible, we are now disallowing any new environment variables. Otherwise, we're going to be on this constant like catching up of like adding things there, but things still getting added to the environment variable. So we're putting like a pause on environment variables and basically making things work for the configurations. So
I have a question on that front.
Yeah.
So you said no new ones. You said you're putting a pause on it. Does that mean, so I assume that means that we can still use environment variables now, right?
Yes,
but
correct.
Does that mean they will eventually be deprecated, or we're just going to stop development on them?
So the idea is that the things that we are using we're going to be able to continue working. It's just that no new environment variables should be created. So everything that you have so far, we are not stopping any of that. And even I'm going to show like even here we saw on this slide that you can still use environment variable on your config file. So the things that exist so far, they're not like going away. We keep them. It's just nothing new is getting added.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, so now with the config file, basically it works is a YAML file, pretty much. And then it's a little more robust, it's easier to expand, a little easier to also like visualize, because before, imagine that you want set up a specific like endpoint to your tracer. And then like, okay, how do you pass all the values that you want to like your trace exporter? You have to like, okay, this environment variable for this and this for the other. But now you just put it on your YAML, act as an object, and put all the things with the right hierarchy. So it works that way. And as I mentioned, you can still use environment variables. So here is the example of when you put the value would be like the equal, it would be like this part saying like, hey, check if I have this environment variable set up. If I don't have, use this value instead. So for example, here are the endpoints, otherwise just lose localhost. And how do you actually say like, I want to use the file? Well, I see the irony on this, but it's set up an environment variable to say that you want to use a file. I do see the irony here, but it's pretty much that is when you say like, when what the SDKs now are implementing is that basically they check this environment variable. So if you have a file and it's a valid file, it's gonna use that and ignore your environment variables. So it's a one or the other. It's not something like it's gonna get a couple of the file and a couple of the file of the environment variable. It's one or the other. So if it checks on that you have a file and is a valid, is going to use those. If there are some parameters that you don't have on your config file, there are a few of them that do have the default values. So those are the ones that are getting set up. And if you don't have a few of them, just say like, if you don't set up here, it's just like a null or like undefined, like you just don't set up that particular value. But that is kind of the idea. I put like an example that you can basically see how it looks like. This is a very like basic one. We have the format on top, and here like some resources. Here an example of like tracer provider, beta provider, and logger provider. A very basic one, just saying like, this is the endpoint that I want to send. So now you have an idea of how it looks like, and you can really do more complex things here, which is the next one that I want to show, which this one is an issue that was open like on the Java repo 5 years ago that was just saying, I just want to filter out health checks. I don't want to be sending traces for them. Like, I don't care. Doesn't make sense why I'm like consuming resources to be sending this. And there was no easy way to do this. But now with the config file, you can, because on your file, you can say like, my tracer provider, I want a sampler. Here you can see like the rules. I want to drop when this attribute matches this pattern. So it's now a little more straightforward that you can just say like, here, follow this. Now imagine doing this when environment variables. How do you like do this? There's no easy way, or you have to like maybe manually you go to the instrumentation and you create your sampler and things like that. That is the other option. But again, it's a lot of work for you. If you can just like say, this is what I want, and whoever is instrumenting the SDKs is the one handling that, is a lot easier for you, for the end user. And we are the one developing, we have to worry, so you don't have to worry. And then here another example, you can see like, there's a lot of information we can put there. So processor, like the batch
I also
type.
wanted to say that Marylia has a blog post that she wrote with a few other people on this topic, and I just put the link in the comments as well if you want to check that out, and in the description.
Awesome.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. Yeah, we just posted like this week talking about, because I mentioned like it's a very recent thing, and in Java it is now like working, and it was a release done on Friday, so it's a very fresh thing here. So yeah, actually we're gonna go to a demo right now. I'm gonna stop sharing, and then Ludmila will do a little demo for you guys.
Yeah, thank you for the intro. So the thing I'm going to show is basically reinforcing your words about how declarative config makes life easier. And we're going to take a look at a very trivial application. It doesn't do anything interesting. It sends two HTTP requests to example.com, one with get method and another one with options. And maybe options requests are not interesting and you want to drop them. So there is nothing interesting from OpenTelemetry standpoint in this application. There is just one thing that wraps this main method into a span. And all the interesting things happen in when we run this application. So how do we do this? This is Java, and Java has a nice feature of Java agent. That's something that is able to intercept when application starts and actually instrument it. So we are instrumenting this application with Java agent, and it will enable a bunch of instrumentation libraries. It would also configure OpenTelemetry SDK to report this telemetry from instrumentations to the backend. Here we use config, right? Imagine we didn't have it. It would still configure some defaults, like OTLP endpoint and things. With config, we can actually override these defaults and also some interesting behavior. Let's take a look at the config. So it's pretty much the same what Marylia showed you in the slides. And we have tracer provider, meter provider, logger provider here. We set service name, and we can enable a bunch of things. All the interesting stuff happens here. We customize the sampler. And imagine like if we used environment variables or Java system properties to do it, we would only be able to configure a different type of sampler, like always on probability. But here the behavior is kind of complicated. We say, okay, there is a fallback and it's always on, and we're going to drop certain spans, client spans with this attribute that matches this value, right? So there is not much interesting that happens if we run this example. It will do the requests. It will report telemetry. See, it made a couple of HTTP requests. If we now look at my local LGTM stack, I have Tempo running here. We'll just check spans for brevity. Okay, what do we have here? We have a span from app declarative config. This is the main span. And we see get request. We don't see options, right? So this what happened was declarative config. Imagine we didn't have it, right? So I have an example of another application. It's actually exactly the same application. The only difference is how we enable OpenTelemetry. Here, we still have Java agent. We provide service name via a system property. We could have done it through environment variable. And we provide a thing called extension. This is Java specific thing. It might not exist in other languages. There is a pretty advanced extensibility point. And the point is that in order to customize this complicated behavior of picking a custom sampler, we need to develop our own library. We need to maintain it. We need to deploy it along with our application. And it took me, well, it's embarrassing. It took me embarrassingly long to write this code. So it enables programmatic configuration of this one specific component, the rule-based sampler. It's configured in the same way as declarative config. It's actually the same implementation, it's just the programmatic interface of it. But I need to register something called customizer provider, and it's kind of difficult to discover, and it's a lot of moving pieces. And the last but not the least, if you want to see what declarative config hides from you, well, declarative config along with other parts of Java agent is here as a small part of programmatic configuration boilerplate you would write if you were to do it all yourself. And it just configures tracing and still uses a bunch of defaults. Okay, so this is the demo. I have some questions for Marylia about the config.
I have a question. Wait, can I ask you
Sure, go
some
ahead.
questions while you
Of course.
have this up and running? Let me try and see if I can summarize this, and maybe that both of you could correct me if I've understood something wrong. So, from what I understand, declarative config does not. So there are two things. When I heard about declarative config, I thought they were talking about declarative config for the OTel collector, which we already have, but this is separate, right?
Yeah, the SDK config. Well, there are some parts that may look and feel similar to the collector, but there are two distinct things, and the components we configure is pretty much different, right? So in SDK, we are interested about instrumentation configuration, something within the application that has, let's say, access to local information. The collector is focused on this batch, high throughput production scenarios, and it's slightly different. Ideally, in the future, maybe we will have more intersection and more commonalities, but they will never be exactly the same.
Okay, and then the second thing is that when you're instrumenting your application, first there's the actual instrumentation part where you're doing it in code, like you still have to import libraries from OTel and stuff. But then there's the configuration part where you're setting, where you have different options and settings, where you can change the endpoint and all that. So declarative configuration only changes that part, right? You still need to instrument your code somehow. It doesn't magically do that, right?
Yeah, that's right. But they kind of go hand to hand. So, declarative config can provide configuration for instrumentation and can say, okay, disable it. So, some other part, like if you use, let's say, Java Agent or some other OpenTelemetry distro that brings instrumentation libraries, this component usually enables both declarative configuration and a bunch of instrumentation libraries. Uh, you can control the instrumentation behavior through declarative config, but the declarative config does not produce telemetry out of thin air. It only tells how this telemetry should be collected and reported.
Yeah,
Am I
as you
right?
saw, like yeah. So as you saw, like the example, like Camila was showing, like at that point, that like she created all the tracer, and then had to put a lot of like this is the span, all those lines. For example, you wouldn't have to create this manually with the creative config because we already see like these are the values. Now the SDK, you go and implement this for me. So there is a mix that you can like skip several things because the SDK is handling for you. You still have the option of do things manually if you want. And also on the declarative config, we can kind of like separate in two areas, I would say, the file. So one, I would say like the general, that is language agnostic. So that is like a really cool thing because the same file, it would work if you have Java, if you have JavaScript, if you have Python. So it's the exact same file for all the SDKs. And then you have a session that is specific for language because there are a few cases that this particular config only exists for the Java agent. So it doesn't make sense to add to the others. So you do also have a part there that is like, okay, Java this, like JavaScript this, and things like that. So you can still use the same file for everybody, which I think is something that is really helpful.
Yeah, that's such a good point that it's cross language because with YAML you don't have to worry if it because I've done this. I've tried to instrument a Java app and then a Python app, and I'm like it's different. I
Yeah.
have to remember what it is for Java, and I think Ludmila, you said that auto configure is only a Java thing, not it doesn't exist for Python. So just things like that I'm like I don't want to have to remember this stuff.
Yes. Yeah, that is the goal. Even like for now, the one thing that we want to really help out, even like us as Grafana, is be able to just show you a file. Like this is a file that you get what you want, at least the very like basic all you want, and then you can customize on top of that. But then you know that it's gonna work no matter what is your application, your level, and things like that. So I think that is the really cool thing about this.
Yeah, and also because it seems like the part that the declarative config replaces is all like boilerplate stuff anyway. You know, when I do this again from scratch, I just like copy paste this whole chunk of text, you know, but because I don't know, it's not, I know you said it's really good for advanced cases, but I think it's also good for beginner cases
Oh, it's
because you don't
perfect.
know all of the settings that you can change or should change. I just want like best practices. Just give it to me. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to have to tweak a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, and one thing that I find also really cool is that, for example, right now you're gonna instrument your application. For you to know all the possible configuration that you can do is so hard for you to find like what is even possible today. Like I don't know, is you're gonna have to look at every single documentation for each type of process or components on different languages. But now you have every single configuration in the same place. And there is even on the repo that is about configuration, there is a file that I'm gonna share also, like that is called like kitchen sink, which is a great example for you to look, which pretty much just say every time that we created a spec for something that should like could exist on the config, an example of it is added to this file, and it has like the value and then actually the description of what it is and the default value if you don't put this one. So if you just want to see what is possible, check that file that is called a kitchen sink, that you have everything there. And then the same place we have one that is migration, that is today you use the environment variables and you want to start using the config file, but you don't know like, oh, do I need to now go and set up what I need to do? So we have an example that actually points to your environment variable. So this is a way for you to do the transition also without having to think too much what you need. We have like some boilerplate. There are things that you're gonna need it.
Yeah, one thing I really love about the hiding the boilerplate that when I look into the config, it actually explains me the magic behind OpenTelemetry distro. It tells me, oh, this is my configuration. This is how the tracer provider is configured. I'm curious, what happens if I remove something? Let's say I remove meter provider. Does it mean my metrics will be disabled, or will they be enabled with some defaults? Do you know?
So for the meter provider, there is some defaults for it. So a lot of the cases might have like, because I know the endpoint has the default, so it might not fill all the other parameters, but it does have boilerplate for all the providers.
Right, and then they probably can disable, let's say, metrics if I don't want them.
Correct.
Through the config. Yeah, wonderful.
So what happens if you mentioned this briefly, but I don't know if I understood it correctly. If you have something in the config, but then you, for some reason, also set an environment variable, like, you know, maybe it's a team, you know, people haven't gotten the memo that they're changing over. Maybe they still ran it with all the environment variables. Did you say that the YAML config will override the environment variables if there is a conflict?
So not override, they would like take precedence. So they will look at the file first. And if the file exists, it only going to look at the file. It's not going to look at the environment variables at all. If the file does not exist, then it's going to look at the environment variables. So there is no like combination of the two, or is one or the other. So what you can do is have environment variables on your config file, but it's not like you're looking at the file and some of the attributes are not there, then it's going to try to look at the environment variable. No, that is not the case. It's just one or the other.
And you can use placeholders for your environment variables. So somebody who migrates you from environment variables to the config, they can create a config file that would take environment variables and use them in the config.
Oh, I see. So that's a good thing to call out. That is probably how people should migrate.
And I think there
Until
is a
everybody gets the
migration
memo.
example.
Yeah,
The
I just added
configuration
that
example.
I put the link to it in the chat.
Yeah, so if you wanna, I'm sharing now. If you wanna put it up, I can go. So this is the example that I mentioned. So you see here like SDK migration config, and you can see here. Let me show like, for example, here is this one saying like, hey, I'm checking the environment variable, and if that does not exist, I'm using false. Or like value, the same thing. Like for service name, I'm trying to check the environment variable, otherwise I use unknown service. So this is something that does work. This is like the example for the migration that are like the basic things that we're expecting. So we have like some propagator, like trace provider, and you can see here like all the values we have default for all of them. So that is kind of like the idea. You can still use it here.
So which languages is this available for? It seemed like Java and maybe PHP.
So here is a compliance matrix that we have today. So if you see here, Java is fully compliant with all the basic requirements for this. PHP as well. JavaScript is the one that I am actually working on it. So it is getting more pluses are getting added to those.
And so what you're
column
saying
as
is it's your favorite.
yeah, I'm the one working on JavaScript, so I was like, yes. But yeah, we have like awesome people working on all the others as well. And as I mentioned, like for example, if you see here Java, you see the pluses all around. Does not mean that it's complete. There are still features missing. But at least all the requirements here that we say that is actually compliant with config file are available. So in Java, you can already use. PHP, you can also use. I think there's also a few features missing. I know there is also for Go and I believe Python. So for Go, there are things, but we just need to update the actual documentation to show how you can actually use it. And that's kind of, yeah, for the JavaScript is not ready to use that yet. Is doing like all the parsing and preparing like the config model itself. But now I am at the point that I'm actually using all of those config models to the actual SDK.
Nice. Is it in development or is it stable? What is the status of the configuration story?
So right now is release candidate 2. So hopefully very soon will be marked as stable. So that is the plan. Hopefully in the following weeks we will have some official stabilization of it. And also there is something, if you're listening in and you still have some feedback, that this is your chance. You can start using, for example, you can use the Java one that is already is ready to use. So you can provide some feedback, anything that might be missing, that is your chance. So we can add that to the actual spec and then before we mark as a stable.
I cannot wait for the declarative config to come to Python. It would save people from writing so much boilerplate code.
You know, if you say that too loudly, Lyudmila, someone will just say like, well, why don't you contribute it? The thought had crossed my mind too, but I wasn't going to say it out loud.
I'm thinking about it.
Okay, well, maybe I can think about it with you in private.
Anyone from the audience? Anyone? Python? Any fans?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the OpenTelemetry thing when people say like, how can we contribute? And there's like all of these languages, all of these features need to be done.
Yeah, and even like some of the SIG, just for in case you don't know, means special interest group. So this is kind of like how we group. It's almost like a one-to-one, like each repo is a SIG. Not exactly, but some cases may vary, but you can think like this way. Some of them are kind of really needing more people to contribute. So if that is something that you're interested, I know that sometimes could be like, oh, I heard about collector, so I want to go to the collector. But there's a lot of people already helping the collector, and there are a few smaller SIGs that really need the help. So try to join those ones, and you're gonna have a really big impact on them.
So you're splitting it up here based on languages, but like just based on features, is there anything that you particularly would like to take declarative config in, or what you would like to see from declarative config in the future?
Yeah, I think it's just like this idea of being easy to use, that you don't have to, like, when you create like your instrumentation file, you have to be the one like setting up everything, like, oh no, I need this component with this value, and then you forget about one. No, I want to have like a single place. I just put the config there. Everything is like there. I don't have to go to different files and different environment variables, and then I want to have everything just configure that in that place.
I
Yeah.
was wondering too, when I learned about this, that maybe it's also kind of a cultural shift, right? Because when everything is in the code, that's a developer problem. Or I don't want to say problem, but like, developers have that happy responsibility of having to instrument everything and configure everything. And having it in a YAML file means that it is shifting more towards the ops side. Do you think that that reflects a cultural change in responsibility for observability, or it's just making it accessible for everyone? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think exactly making it accessible to everyone, because it's a language that both sides can understand. So it's something that now is like the developers will be able to like communicate with the ops and vice versa. They can say like, oh, these are the things, like for example, I want you to send to this location, like this is the endpoint that we should be using. Like, I don't know how the information, like the telemetry, is going to arrive there, but that is the value that I wanted to send. And then the development team like can just like confirm and then run this, use this config file to set things up. So it kind of like almost becomes like a bridge between those two teams, because now it is like that common language that both sides can understand.
And I think it opens more doors for things like remote configuration or dynamic configuration, where you would be maybe, hopefully, one day push a change. The ops team would be able to push a change and, let's say, reduce the sampling rate or turn on some new instrumentation that was off by default for specific investigation. And then developers don't need to go and write this feature, right? It's just a part of remote configuration push, which sounds scary but also exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine like you are just handling an on call, and you as well just go to this file, now say like, okay, now add the type to like debug instead of just info, and you don't have to talk about the team to deploy and like change this on the code. No, it's just there, you're accessible, and then restart and you can see the things that you need.
Okay, can you explain a little bit more about remote configuration and dynamic configuration? I think I understand, but maybe I think I need more clarity.
Yeah, so for example, the log level Marylia gave is awesome. Normally, you would deploy to production this default log level like warning, right? So you are not overwhelmed with all the logs. But imagine something goes wrong and you see errors related to a certain area, I don't know, network connection, and you would want to enable more login for this specific area so that you can see why these errors are occurring, what else in the logs. And in a perfect world, my ops team, or if maybe in a DevOps, could say, oh, okay, let's enable this specific logger with info level or debug level. And then if this configuration file can be redeployed and reread, or if it's part of some protocol between, let's say, Grafana Cloud or another backend and your application, then you push this configuration change, and application is picking up this configuration. And now, instead of recording just warning logs, it records more verbose information. And then you can turn it off so you don't overwhelm your backend.
Okay, so So that is remote configuration, right? But it is also dynamic configuration because it's doing it on the fly. Is dynamic configuration the same as live configuration?
Yeah, probably. I don't know, but we're talking about dreams, right? It's the
Yeah,
things that
dream.
might eventually happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dream is just like make one change on the line and it's already picking
Yeah.
up. And yeah.
Well, YAML is definitely a step towards that. Like it brings it closer to the whole GitOps ideal, like utopia of just one little change in a YAML file that's pushed to GitHub changes everything and redeploys. But now it's like, oh, maybe you don't even have to redeploy. Maybe maybe it's already it doesn't need the restart. That would be awesome. That's a great dream to have. Was there anything else that you can think of, Marylia, that you would like to see or that has already been discussed about adding to the declarative config?
I think yeah, that just now is the dream of just making that change and instantly gets applied everywhere.
Yeah. Well, you also have some things here, some resources, I think, to get started.
Yeah, so those are the first one is the blog post that we just published, me and two other colleagues from my team, Gregor and Jay, about the declarative config, showing a few examples how to work on Java and just current states in general. Then I put here the repo of the actual configuration if you want to check what is the actual spec, and then the two examples that I mentioned. So the kitchen sink, the migration one, and if you have questions, if you have your question is general about the file, you can go to the OTel config file on the CNCF Slack. If your question is specific to your SDKs, like, oh, how do I really initialize this on JavaScript on Java? Then you can go to the direct SIG. So that would be like the OTel Java, OTel JavaScript, and so on.
So can
Okay,
you tell us?
yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. I was going to jump into the contribution story, and ask Marylia how did the project this big uh, come to fruition?
Yeah, so that is one, even like they were mentioned on the blog post, it started like 5 years ago. And it was like how we can filter health checks. And so that is something that is also really cool about OpenTelemetry is that like not necessarily want to say, okay, we can figure out a way to filter for your specific case, do this hacky thing, and then we create this component and that's it. Or we can actually have something more robust and say like, okay, let's really think about this, go step by step, have a working group thinking about this specific problem, get feedback from people, have proof of concepts, and that, of course, this is why things like that take time. Similar thing that happened with the database semantic conventions that I work with Mila on it. So there are just things that take time to make sure that we hear end users, that we hear people that are actually going to use, and what makes sense for everybody, what things that should exist. And with this is something that is a long project and a lot of people contribute to, and it's something that also get evolved. So might have a couple of people that started and then they had to like move on to something else, then another people come in and pick up and continue, and now is on this state like, okay, it's becoming stable, but we need more people implementing on different SDKs. So that is something like, for example, that I jump in and like, okay, I'm gonna instrument this on JavaScript, and we have people in other languages. So it's a very something that is a collaboration amongst a lot of people, just handling different parts of this project, so we can like all come together and just make it easier for everybody.
It's always a difficult thing, right, when in open source, because it's great that there are so many minds that can be working on something, and there's a lot of like community spirit because people aren't doing this for money except for the few who are lucky, who are paid to contribute to open source. But it is still a challenge when people are all getting together and they're from different companies with maybe sometimes competing agendas, or you're trying to coordinate this massive effort, and that's where some sort of leadership is necessary for OTel.
Yeah, so that is something that we want to always strive to have this to be like, for example, vendor neutral. So we don't want to have anything like, oh, let's do this way because it works this way with my vendor. That is something that we are really mindful about it. Of course, we might hear opinions on different people just to see like what makes sense since people are using those backends. But again, as you mentioned, like Alice, I'm very lucky that my full-time job is working on this open source project. So at the same time, I'm very mindful of people that I know that I sometimes work with people that are doing this on their time off time or doing like on the weekends. So I'm not gonna like say like, no, I want this feature and you have to work on this. Of course not. So, but that is something that at the same time, we see a lot of people contributing together, and we do have different groups. The one is called like the technical committee that will help when there is like decisions that need to be made on a technical level. And we also have the governance committee that it is the group making sure that the health of the project in general is in a good place. What are the roadmap priorities and just how we can help the project in general.
So in this
Now,
case, like the governance committee would do something like, would you be involved in making sure that the other languages also eventually go in this direction, at least, of declarative configuration and YAML file based configuration rather than environment variables? Is that the sort of thing that you would do?
So the governance committees, like each of the SIGs have their own collect the liaison. So one GC member is responsible for each one. So those things can be brought by the GC. At the same time, each SIG has their own autonomy. We also don't want the GC be like micromanaging and say like, you have to do this at this time, because we know that might have different priorities. So it is a thing that each group has their own autonomy to do what their thing, but they also have the support and basically the backup of the GC whenever they need help. And at the same time, things like the group can say like, hey, I think we are hitting a lot of feedback that, for example, the Declarative Config is something that a lot of people are interested in. So I think that is something that you should be paying attention to and look. And so it can provide also guidance on that level as well.
yeah, the GC work is very hard. It's like herding cats, but it's a very special cats. They don't even, or they are not even interested in food or anything. You don't necessarily know, and you need to like build this energy around the community, so people would start to contribute to something in common. Otherwise, it will be a patchwork of small different features here and there. So the GC elections are coming next week, right?
Yes.
And you are participating. You're Marylia. You are one of the candidates. What brought you here? Why do you want to be part of GC and doing all this difficult work?
Yeah, I that is something that I'm oriented just because I like this part of figuring out like what we can help, how we can organize, and even like things as a maintainer, like the contributor experience. Is that something that was like, okay, how we can actually help everybody to be contributor? And then with this, I started actually joining several SIGs just to like listen in, and you hear some pain points on different places. So you just keep having like ideas of like how I can help. I want to be able to do this for this group, and I want to be able to do this for that group. So it's just having this level that I really want to help out other teams to have like a good place to have a healthy level of like new contributors, and they don't know what to do, and at the same time be able to actually align different SDKs. And I know we have like different priorities for, like, for example, people really want logs to be stable and has been in development for I don't know how long. So it's just a little improving. I want to focus a little on improving the communication with the end user and the people that are actually developing. So that is something that got interested in me. And just because I mentioned that I'm lucky that I can actually have the time to focus on that. So because it's actually my job, I don't have to like divide with something else. I think I can bring this also like a new view to the team. It's also good to have like fresh ideas and circle a little the people that are working on something. So I think that is kind of just bringing a new perspective as well.
I'm glad you mentioned logs because because in the Python say like for Python the metrics and traces are well supported, but like logs are still kind of sketchy. And yeah, that is something that I would love to see improve. So you I think raise a good point that you are also like, this is your job. You have the time to be able to focus on these things, and we're super lucky that we all are paid by Grafana to work on open source projects. How awesome is that?
Yeah.
They also wanted to call out another of our coworkers who is also up for re-election this month, and that's Ted Young. Oh yeah, so here's the slide for how to vote. This starts next week, October 27, and it's confusing about the time. Like Ludmila and I were going over it, trying to translate it into UTC, and it's confusing, but it's on October 27 for sure.
No, yes, because we do the everywhere on Earth time, what it does. So that means wherever you are from the 27 until the 29, like midnight your time. So we have like three days for voting. So it's from Monday to Wednesday is the election. So if you are a contributor to OpenTelemetry, you are eligible to vote, and then you can vote here. You can see the link for the vote here. That right now you can log in, but it's not going to show anything because it's not yet up. But then next Monday you will be able to see the candidates.
How would somebody know if they are eligible?
So the second link that was shared there is an issue that lists everybody that is eligible to vote. If you are somebody that, so one thing that is a challenge here is that this is counting people that contributed to any of the repos. But you might be somebody that doesn't contribute to the repo, but you do, for example, talks on it, you help on Slack with questions. Those things are not getting counted, but you can still vote if that issue that is linked there also have a form, and that you can say like, hey, I wanted to be able to vote because I am actually involved in this project. So you can do this until the 24th. So you have like 2 more days to be able to say, I want to be able to vote. And this way on Monday, you can actually do the voting.
Yeah, so don't take your chances. If you open the voting links on 27, go vote on 27.
Yes.
Yeah. And in general, like how would you go about deciding who to vote for, and how many people can you vote for?
So this year, so in total, the GC is composed by 9 people, and each term is 2 years. So 1 year, 5 people come out. The next year, 4 people come out. So this year so we have like 5 spots. So there are currently 10 people, 10 candidates. So you can vote, because there are 5 spots, you can vote for 5 different people. Or you can just vote 5 times for me. That also works. No, that is not possible. Yeah, but yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so October 27, we even have a nice little URL thing here for you. Grad.fan, OTel vote. It's really just to the voting one, but you should be voting for Marylia and Ted. They're awesome. Can vouch for the fact that they're good people as well, aside from their contributions, which speak for themselves.
Thank you.
Was there anything else that you wanted to say, Marylia?
No, I think is if you're really interested about Declarative Config, check it out, play a little. And if you also just want to be a contributor to OTel, check the Slack channel, OTel new contributor, join SIGs and listen. We are always welcoming to people. If you want to help with the Python, with the logs, and apparently
Oh no, see,
join.
I knew it would come back to bite me.
join.
Oh, I have a question for you before we go. Like if you had a magic wand, this is the magic wand question. If you could change one thing and it just like don't worry about how difficult it is to implement. If you could just get it done, what would that be in the OTel world?
I wanted to be able to, with just one click, have my application instrumented. Like it can identify what are the, I don't know, all the tools that I'm using. I don't have to like initialize, and it just looks for me, like identify and just set up everything for me. So it's the Declarative Config plus. Like you don't even have to create the file. They create the file for you and initialize it.
Yeah. I would say something very similar, except I want to go even further. I don't just want it to instrument things. Like I want like I don't want to have to set up Grafana either. I want the dashboards already up. I want the analysis there. I want alerting set up. Like basically I don't want to have to care about the tool. I don't want to have to choose or tweak anything. I just want to be like, yes, go.
Yeah, I just want
And
like
everything
hear
set
a
up.
voice that tells me like, oh, now something is down and this is how you fix it on your system. That is
And I also wanted to cost nothing.
yes. Of course.
Okay, you've gone too far. That's the line, and you crossed it. Yeah, that would be awesome. Okay, well, everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you both for joining me and answering all my beginner questions. If anyone watching has any feedback about this style of series, Ludmilla and I are just starting this. This is literally number one. We want to talk about all the ways that Grafana and OpenTelemetry intersect. And we also want to talk about like how to get started with telemetry. Whether you're using Grafana or not, there's a lot of like beginner concepts that I'm personally interested in digging into. So if you had feedback on that, just leave them in the comments, and we do look at those and we do act on those. And again, on October 27, please vote for Marylia Gutierrez and Ted Young.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
boss.
everyone. Thank you for having me.
All
Thanks for
right. Have
coming.
a good rest of your week.